Kindly silence all mobile devices as the program is about to begin.
The story of our startup is pre-solve and post-solve.
Welcome to Solve at MIT.
Our mission is to drive innovation to solve world challenges. We find the most promising innovators that are using technology to solve the problems of their community and of the world.
Terjimly is the world's most accessible translator and interpreter service.
At OM Gyno, we focus on sexual and reproductive health in the Middle East, where it is quite conservative.
Earth Enable is a social enterprise with the mission of making living conditions healthier and more dignified for rural families across the world.
Country like India, over 70% of schools do not have computers. That's where we come in.
The global nature of the problems we're dealing with are so big that no single institution or industry or country can deal with them all on their own.
This is not just about finding the innovators, but about pairing them with the organizations that will help them scale.
The network of MIT Solve is so powerful.
The access that they have to creative thinkers all over the world.
We have facilitated over $65 million to innovators. Collectively, they impact more than 170 million lives.
They're coming up with innovations that are informed by their communities, but are also taking advantage of the most amazing opportunities of technology. It's an incredibly exciting time.
This is where you drive innovation. This is where you build technology solutions for the future.
Solve made me feel like part of a global platform that I would have never reached from where I come from.
It has helped us think bigger and bolder.
Solve is the world we all want.
Solve is the best of humanity.
Solve is a powerhouse.
Please welcome Hala Hanna, the Executive Director of Solve.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Solve Challenge Finals. It's so nice to have you here. I'm actually going to take a moment back. This summer, we watched as fires burned in Haiti and Canada and Greece. And for me, it was a stark reminder of the dichotomy of technology. You know, fire, manifestation of climate change, decimating an island, economies, and fire, the very first technology, the one that brought humans together and propelled civilization. Humans have lived with a dichotomy of technology since the dawn of time. And today we find ourselves at another juncture with generative AI, and we have to make choices. And so what if we choose that every line of code heals, and every algorithm uplifts, and every device includes? What if we steward the fire, as our indigenous communities have done for millennia? At MIT Solve, we find, select, and support amazing social entrepreneurs who are filled with the urgency to steward the fires in their communities. There's the innovator creating cooling solutions in Pakistan, the one reimagining insurance so that farmers don't suffer from extreme weather events, and the one who is reinventing digital banking by and for indigenous people. And on and on. This is just 3 of our innovators. Solve has selected 300 of them to date, diverse in every way. And today, 31 of those solvers are here in this room. I'm going to ask you to stand up. Our 2023 solver class. Thank you. They're addressing our 2023 global challenges around learning for civic action, health in fragile contexts, climate adaptation, financial inclusion, and of course our Indigenous Communities Fellowship. But why are you here? It's raining, 1 mile up the river, our heads of state and corporations are gathering for the UNGA, and you're here with this big word around your neck, solve. I think it's because, like us, you really believe in social entrepreneurs using technology to scale and change the world. And maybe you believe change often happens at the margins and before scaling and taking over the world. And that's a keyword we're going to be coming back to quite a bit today, scale. And one of the conditions of being able to scale is, of course, capital. That's why to date, with our supporters, we've mobilized over $70 million in funding and services to our innovators. I think the brand video still says 65. But and to date, our innovators have reached 170 million lives. And that's a big number, but really that's a child who has access to better learning tools. That's a mother receiving better maternal health care. That's better air we breathe, better water we drink, and that's fewer people dying of reasons we can prevent. So that's why we're here. Okay, what to expect from today? This morning we're going to talk to leaders about the role of solutions that are tech-powered and locally led in advancing global development. We'll then spend the majority of the day discovering and meeting our 2023 Solver class. And then we come back here together for our closing plenary, where we will be discussing with leaders pathways towards scale. And what we will do at the closing plenary is announce the winners of the 2023 prizes. We have 1.5 million in prize funding available to our solvers that will be awarding mostly throughout the day, but mostly at the closing. And of course, all the teams also received $10,000 from Solve as part of this 9-month program. But without our supporters like HP, GM, Sony, Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, Merck & Co., Living Proof, and so many more, none of this is possible. So thank you to our supporters. So stay with us till the end, and throughout the day, I'm just going to encourage us to all be one thing, to be givers. Give your ear, your insight, your network, your counsel, and if you're inspired, certainly, we're always looking for more capital. And that's all, just be givers. Is everyone ready to get started? Yeah. Is everyone ready to get started? Yeah! I'm so pleased to introduce our first speaker of the day. She's an academic, an engineer, a mentor, and a supporter of Solve for many years. Please join me in welcoming MIT Provost Cindy Barnhart.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Hala, for the introduction. So I've been a Solve supporter for many years. As a Challenge Leadership Group member, a judge, and attending the 2017 and 2018 Solve Challenge Finals. So it's great to be back here. Let me begin by congratulating the 2023 Solver class. Again, we have to clap for you. Lost my pencil. So MIT founded Solve in 2015 with the purpose of finding, selecting, and supporting the work of exceptional innovators like you. It's really inspiring to see so many of you thinking about the climate crisis as part of your work, particularly after this summer of extreme weather events, as Hala mentioned. Thank you for reducing carbon emissions, adapting agriculture to a hotter world, supporting those displaced by disasters, and so much more. These are the solutions that the world needs. Research, discovery, and innovation in energy and environmental science and other climate-related sciences is, as you can imagine, a core part of MIT's work and a central focus of our new president, Sally Kornbluth. We at MIT are also prioritizing other pressing issues and opportunities, like how to address AI's potentials and pitfalls, and how to drive advances in the life sciences. These challenges require new thinking, new partnerships, and solutions that scale quickly. And this is what drives each of us at MIT. It requires drawing on our spirit of openness, innovation, and our history of cross-disciplinary work as a foundation for success. And as Hala said earlier, it requires collective action well beyond MIT. And we know in order to solve the world's most pressing problems, we must be committed at MIT to not only advancing knowledge and educating students in science, technology, and other areas of scholarship, but we must act in service to the world, as you do. So that requires that we have both the ideas and the audacity to put big ideas into action. So you, the 2023 Solver class, exemplify exactly this. And so do all those who support you. Thank you all for your leadership, your creativity, and for engaging in this critically important work. I hope you enjoy the day. Thank you.
And now, please welcome Sarah Chandler, VP of Environment and Supply Chain Innovation, Apple, and moderator Johanna Muir, Academic Editor, Stanford Social Innovation Review.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Good morning.
Sarah, Vice President of the Environment and Global Supply Innovation, Global Supply Chain Innovation at Apple. Tell us a little bit more about your work and role at Apple.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. This is a perfect start to my Climate Week. So I lead a team that is broadly charged with upholding Apple's values in our global supply chain. So that's everything from labor and human rights to health and safety. It includes not just trying to figure out how to not harm, but actually do good for the environment. And we are also very focused on decarbonizing our products. So that's part of a goal that we call Apple 2030, which is to be carbon neutral, not just for our corporate footprint, we're actually already carbon neutral for our global operations, but for our supply chain and all of our products, including their lifetime use. So we try to really bring innovation to everything that we do, as is in the title, really trying to look at how we create systemic change and build supply chains that are good for people and planet.
Talking about innovation and success in innovation, last week was a big moment. You released your first carbon neutral products. Certainly a milestone. Tell us a little bit more what it took to get there and what should be a next milestone.
Yes, so much in that question. First, yes, very exciting week. Our first carbon neutral products in the all new Apple Watch lineup. And also, a huge milestone, as with any big project that we undertake. So it was definitely an eventful week. I want to actually back up a little bit, talk a little bit about how we got there, because I think when you're talking about things like carbon neutral, the how is critically important. So we really set out to say, okay, how do we actually decarbonize a product? How do we remove the greenhouse gas emissions from the process of making and using a device? And we looked at the three biggest sources of emissions, which turn out to be electricity, the electricity used to make the product and to use it, materials, what the product is made out of, and transportation, actually. How does it get to the customer? So we really dove deep into each of those. Electricity, the answer sounds quite simple. We can talk about maybe why it's not always simple, but the answer with electricity is it needs to be renewable. That's how to take the carbon out of that. So that's what we've done for both manufacturing and for the customer's use of the product. Materials, our answer is recycled and renewable materials. They're generally lower carbon. We've had a goal for many years to build all of our products one day using only recycled and renewable material. So this was a really important milestone for us, and that's how we get carbon out of that process. And then transportation, we moved to lower carbon modes of shipping. So ocean freight, as an example, is like a 20th of the carbon impact of air freight. So we put those three things together. We got a 75% reduction in the carbon footprint of the product. And that's amazing, probably close to technical barrier in terms of what's available in the market and scalable today. It's really important to us that all of these solutions that we're using be scalable. And then for the 25% that's left, we invest in high quality carbon removal projects. We use nature-based solutions to do that. So wrap all that up, that's how we get to carbon neutral. We announced some other things too, though, because this is a journey, right? We're really trying to address the whole system here. So we also announced that we're moving away from leather in our products, and there's some really incredible materials with recycled content out. And then we also announced a customer feature called Grid Forecast. So you can see with a complication in your home app or for example, on your watch, when there might be cleaner energy available on your grid, and maybe you want to choose to charge devices then. So really trying to wrap around this question and bring some excitement, some enthusiasm, some fun stuff for the customer, but also very deep look at how do we decarbonize.
So lots of milestones. Anything in particular that you see like this is really a milestone we ought to reach soon? Also as an industry, not necessarily just Apple.
I mean, yes. So I would say renewable energy is a great one, right? I mean, there are places in the world where we still need to improve access to economically viable, accessible, renewable energy. And that's advocacy we should all undertake. But for manufacturing processes, for example, a lot of them can move to renewable pretty easily. I think that's a global challenge that we can absolutely undertake. And I guess I would say, I mean, I can say probably to this group of folks, look at what you're using. Look at the materials in your products. Look at the materials in whatever you are proposing to do, and figure out how to make them less carbon intensive. I mean, that's the work ahead of us all.
We talked about materiality, we talked about renewables. You obviously cover a global market, a global supply chain. Tell us a little bit more how you manage to localize, to contextualize actually your approach and really adapt or adjust how you operate depending on the particular place you go.
Yeah, this is a big question. I'll stick with renewable energy for a second. Global goal, obviously, all the electricity needs to be renewable, but then it gets pretty local pretty quickly. And the reason for that is that grids are generally in a local environment. We want, for example, suppliers. We have 300 of them who have committed to transitioning to renewable energy for their Apple load. We actually want them to do that in a way in which they have such a positive experience they do it for all of their customers. That's really what success looks like to us. So we spend a lot of time, for example, getting really tactical in local language. What are the renewable options in your grid? How can you engage in policy? We will join, for example, we're the first non-Japanese company to join a Japanese climate leadership partnership. Really trying to find places to plug in, to raise voices together, to say we need systemic change, we need renewable energy on this particular grid. So it gets pretty local pretty quickly. But then, of course, you can zoom out again and say the world really needs to transition to renewable energy. I think circular economy is actually a lot of the same, right? We want to move all of our products to recycled renewable material. We do that by focusing on 14 key priority materials because you have to start somewhere, but also because they're 90% of the mass that we ship to customers. So it's a good place to start. But then again, you're working with a particular material in a particular place and you're trying to get the best-in-class material recovery. And so that, again, becomes quite a local challenge. And maybe even hyper-local because it actually starts with getting customers to bring products back. Please bring your products that you're no longer using, by the way, back to an Apple retail store, recycle them online, and then we can use those materials again. In many cases, you actually get a great credit as well. But that comes down to like the ultimate local, right? An individual in an individual place taking an action.
You talked about the systemic approaches, and what I hear from you, obviously you have to cover the global system, the local system. Also in your remarks, you already alluded us to the fact that we cannot just think about ecological systems, social system as local communities, but at the same time also the political system. So there's a lot of work that we also collectively ought to do. What are some of the points for advice for all of us, either corporations but also smaller startups that you can give us, given that you have a very successful career in this area, materiality, renewables, circularity?
I mean, one, I'll say I think this is where your research is so important, so we can all figure out how these things intersect and how to kind of define the system and enact change. I will go back to it has to be really truly scalable things that folks can implement. And I think for us, the biggest kind of guide here is that we're really trying to do these things in a way in which everyone can do them. And a big part of that is, honestly, we're just not here for the false belief that there is a trade-off between what is good for business and what is good for the environment. It's honestly just not true. It's like a thing we've been told and a system we've designed that doesn't have to be that way. And to just use us as an example, we've cut our carbon footprint 45% since 2015. In that same time period, our revenue has increased 65%. So this idea that you have to do one or the other, good for your bottom line or good for the planet, is just not true. And I think that makes things pretty easy to copy because you don't have to be navigating a trade-off. I think if you look deeply at the issues, you will find that there are systemic ways to enact change. I mentioned our suppliers who are transitioning to renewable energy for all of their load, not just for their Apple load. That's one example. Looking at how we move materials around the world so that we can move recycled materials, not just newly mined materials. I mean, these are exciting things, and I guess my bottom line would be like, get to work, do something, try something, see if it works. It might not work, and if it doesn't, try something else.
Thank you so much, Sarah Chandler. What a great way to kick off today.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Please welcome Jonathan McKay, co-founder, Same Same.
Hi everyone, my name is Jono, and I'm here today because I believe that every single young person deserves a chance to achieve their potential, no matter who they are, no matter where they live, no matter who they love. To help them do just that, the team at Same Same have created a WhatsApp chatbot that provides its users with access to private, identity-affirming, locally relevant mental health support in the palm of their hands. Being a teenager is difficult for everyone, but it is especially challenging for those of us who are queer. In South Africa, LGBTQI+ youth suffer from depression at 4 times the rate of their peers. When I was in South Africa growing up, struggling with my sexuality, I knew exactly where the one LGBT-friendly clinic was. But like most young people, fear of stigma and discrimination kept me from accessing the services that I needed. Now, a host of new digital mental health services are providing a model for the way that we can reach and support young people. But unfortunately, none of them cater to the specific needs of queer youth who are living in places where it's not just difficult to be different, sometimes it is even illegal. At Same Same, we know that context matters. That's why we're using WhatsApp. It's already on everyone's phones, so it's accessible. It's end-to-end encrypted, so it's safer. And even though our service is free, we can use WhatsApp to make the service light on data, so it's affordable to access in places where data charges are still very expensive. At the core of our chatbot is an evidence-based cognitive behavioral program. Wrapped around this CBT course, we've got stories that help queer youth feel seen and connected, essential information about gender and sexuality that's locally relevant, and links to service providers and resources that young people can use on the next stage of their journey. Just over a year ago, I was here on this stage, representing the Same Same team with a prototype and big ambitions. Now, we've laid the foundations to deliver impact at scale sustainably. With the direct support of the MIT Solve team, we forged a partnership with Living Proof to produce new content sets. We added members to our board. We were featured in the press, and we found community with a group of social entrepreneurs and fellow founders who've helped us feel a little bit less alone on what can sometimes feel like a very challenging path. The results are starting to speak for themselves. In just the last few months, over 1,000 young people have started potentially life-changing conversations with the Same Same chatbot. 71% of them are experiencing symptoms of depression. But 77% of those who have completed our CBT course say that their mental health is much better as a result of our chatbot. Young people are telling us themselves what the bot means to them. Lalami in Johannesburg had always found it challenging to access any kind of support or therapy because her family didn't believe in it. But she told us after using the bot that it helped her in ways that she couldn't even have imagined before. We have funding for our work in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, but with the support of partners, technical experts, and on-the-ground organizations who are serving the community, we're going to be in places like Kenya, Angola, and Nigeria, scaling and unlocking cost efficiencies as we do, so that eventually young people everywhere understand, yes, okay, we might all be a little bit different, but ultimately, we are all the same. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Elon Goldfawn, President, Inter-American Development Bank, and moderator, Neela Montgomery, board partner, Graycroft.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. You've set your priorities on impact as social development, infrastructure, and climate response. But you've also said that we need to make choices and prioritize. What are you choosing to focus on?
Well, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, MIT is my heart. So I always be very close to MIT. And when I started at AB, and I just started this year, and they asked me what are the priorities and why don't you do this and that and everything, I say, well, when everything is a priority, nothing is. And choosing priorities means not doing what you don't want to do, but not doing what you want to do, but it's not so essential like other things. So that's so in our work, there are basically three areas that we believe are very important. First, social issues. I'm dealing with Latin America and the Caribbean, where inequality is one of the highest in the world. Poverty is still there. Society is very impatient. They don't want to wait for 10 more decades to have good transportation, good health system, better education. So that needs to be dealt immediately. But governments don't have fiscal resources. And we do need to provide them with more financing, more knowledge, more capacity for social. Second priority, climate. There's a big issues, global, everybody has to be there. So climate is certainly something that we need to be dealing. So with social on one side and the global climate crisis on the other, that's more than enough for our small little region of the world that we need to deal. So that's something quite important. But there is a silver lining here. The global challenges, climate, the global warming, the need for clean energy, the need for minerals like lithium and copper and things like that, the need to transform biodiversity and nature, the need to provide the world with food security. All of what I just mentioned are essential elements of Latin American Caribbean have the conditions to provide for the region, but for the world. Amazon region is the very important biodiversity nature. Lithium, copper, that's what you have 2/3 of the world in the region. Clean energy transition. We already have countries like Brazil have 50% of their own metrics already clean. In Central America, 80%. This is the region that will be able to export clean energy to the rest of the world. So Latin America and the Caribbean are clearly part of the solution for the global challenges. And that's an opportunity also.
That's very exciting to hear. And as you put the capital to work behind these high impact areas like global warming or climate or biodiversity, where do you see the need for the most innovation?
Well, what we are doing is that we are partnering with MIT Solve, with others, to basically bring the innovators, to bring the startups to us. How do we do it? We have an open innovation program where we reach out, use our expertise. We have, I'm going to talk more about it. We have the IDB Lab. We have our own innovation unit, and we have a program of bringing them in. Today, we have more than 500 innovative solutions that have come out in areas like education, water, sanitation, those are the social areas I mentioned, energy, urban development, that has to do with more the challenges in general. We have an open IDB platform where the initiatives, where you can look at it openly, transparently. Well, I'm thinking about something in this area. Go to the open IDB platform and be part of our open innovation program. Just to give you an example of things that have happened recently. The Amazonia BioBuilders is a call for innovators to identify new ways to support and strengthen the bioeconomy in the Amazon region. Protect the Amazon is not just telling the region just not deforested. It's also telling the people what else to do. What is the alternative? What are the jobs? So these innovators will tell us what to do with the bioeconomy there. What are the new solutions? Another example that we may have, with MIT Solve, we came with a successful call for Rethink Plastics to search for solutions for a single-use plastic in Latin America and the Caribbean. So it's concentrated in the region we're dealing in a very important issue of recycling, and we are partnering with MIT Solve to bring. And finally, we are a bank, Inter-American Development Bank. We finance, and part of it means that we can bring resources to the region. So we need innovations in terms of financial innovations. How we can make, at the same time, bring more money and give the incentives for the right approach. So things like, just to give you an example, we are doing debt swaps. So you get debt, the region has a lot of debt, and you swap for new debt and give you some savings, and these savings, you say, this is for, in the case of Ecuador, for example, this is for Galapagos. So you have to preserve Galapagos. In the case of Barbados, is to preserve the oceans there. That's what we already did. But we are getting calls for new innovations in the financial to do other things. So we have innovations in general for our social, for our climate, but we have innovations also in terms of financial, because we are a bank and we need to think about them too.
So you mentioned IDB Labs, which I think is something that's you've put significant resources behind, and as a bank, I'm sure you're aware of the returns on these kinds of investments. So what do you see as the primary benefits to the bank? And then also, how do you think about, what has spurred this kind of investment in innovation culturally for you?
Well, we are proud to say that we are the only international institution, a development bank, that has a lab. So we have an IDB lab. And it's not new, it's not me. It's been there for years, decades. So do you ask, why is the Inter-American Development Bank has a lab and the others don't? Clearly, this is the region where we need to foster more innovation. We need to bring more startups. we need to make productivity a big leapfrog from where we are. So the needs brings us to the IDB Lab. We are in a world where we need the lab to deal with social issues, help us, how we can approach health. So if you are in Mexico, for example, and you care about tertiary health, so how do you care about the elderly? So we partner with a startup that offers all the services online with your app to the caregiver. And that means that you don't have to go to the hospital so much, you don't have to have so much things. So that was so good that the mayor of Mexico City, which had millions of people, say, well, why don't we scale this up? This is the type of innovations we need for the region. So we need to partner with MIT Solve. We need to have our IDB Lab. We need to ask for startups to come, because this is the way we're going to solve the macro problem of productivity, but also the social and climate priorities we have.
Great, thank you. And obviously this room is full today of innovators and startup leaders. And I myself used to work in a large corporate, then I helped startups, and I realized how difficult it is to work with large corporations from the other side now. What advice would you give to people? I can't imagine working with a bank or a multilateral organization such as yourself.
Well, there's a lot of complementarities, and you should feel proud of what you're doing, and don't be shy to come. You're more than welcome, because what you do is very important. Just to give some advice, when you come to us, you're thinking sometimes about commercial result, unicorn, or just make your livelihood. We care about impact in the region. We care about how many people we get out of poverty, how many people we get health systems. We care about impact of what you're doing. We don't mind that you're going to make it commercially viable. Actually, we want it to be viable. But we want you to concentrate, to tell us what will make change of the lives of the people. Because this is our main goal. Second, you should take advantage of a multilateral development bank, all this large bank. How do you do it? First, you need to understand that not only we can be your support, which sometimes is the main goal that come to us, but sometimes we could be also clients of your products. So think about us as somebody that helps you with the others, but think about it as somebody that you can work, that help our issues too. Finally, you need to think about the multilateral as ones that can help you make the connections, make the other reach to other people, and we can be your support commercially with financing. We could be your clients, but we can be also your promoters, so that you can have links. And the reason we do all the three is because our main ambition is to be able to have an impact. So when we partner you with the rest, is because we believe what you are doing could help not only the others, but the people that they serve. So if we work with countries, we care about the people these governments in these countries do.
Thank you, Alain. We really appreciate your progressive approach and support for MIT Solve.
Now, MIT, whatever I can do, we're going to be together.
All right. Thank you.
Please welcome David Sengay, Chief Minister, Sierra Leone. Her Excellency, Toyin Siraki, President, Well-Being Foundation. And moderator, Lisa John, Secretary General, Civicus.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to challenge you. This is the Solve Challenge. You cannot absorb new information if you're not using all of your 5 senses, right? So we've been using our ears, we've been using our capacity to absorb. I'm going to flip the script a bit and make you do a few things that will really make you move in your seats. So when you're clapping for this session, I want you to clap with your feet. You know how to do that? Can we do that? Great. And then when we end, I have a little exercise that we'll do, and that's say solve with our hands, but we'll get to that at the end of this session. So I'm really pleased that we have 2 fantastically dynamic leaders on the stage. We have a set of questions to just energize the moment in terms of what they've done with innovation, what they've done with partnerships. So I'm going to start with you. Both of you, maybe a question for both of you. There's a lot of concern in the news right now about West Africa in particular, the political instability, what's happening in Niger, what's happening in Senegal. But as somebody who lives on the continent, I live in South Africa, we know that there's a community, there's a force for change on the continent as well. So what in your view, given that we're also celebrating the inclusion of the African Union into the G20, what in your view are the kind of beacons of hope, but also the areas of concern or things that we need to kind of keep in mind in terms of challenges for innovation on the continent? So I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, and hello, everybody. You know, I was really happy when I heard that Africa was joining the G20, so it's going to be known as the G21. And I think, I don't want to use the words come of age, but I think we are really growing and taking our position in the world stage. But I would like this, full of hope and scope and scale. I would like this to be more than just the North is recognizing the South. I think this is the time now for us to bring African intelligence to the fore. We have to bring our own people, our own data, our own resources as well, and we have to drive both the narrative, the activity, and the fact of our development for the future. So it's very, very exciting, but it's also going to take quite a bit of responsibility, because that old narrative of okay, Africa, it's time to rise, it's time to shine, and then we do just one thing and we wait for them to clap for us, that is over now. The world is changing, and when the world came out of COVID, we came out of very, very difficult times, and it's now time for Africa to invest in itself so that it becomes an equal partner at that investment table. And then when we are arguing for, the issues that matter to us, whether it's adaptation, mitigation, to build resilience, we're doing so from a point of informed and evidential basis. So the emotion has to come out of our investments, and the economic argument has to drive our future for people-centered development and to build the sort of infrastructure that really gives us that resilience. It's a very exciting time for Africa, but it's also a time of great concern. We have seen democracies, I don't want to use the word topple, because the movements that are moving these democracies to shift out of the way have been homegrown movements. And I think it's important to stress that we must never return to the era of bloodshed as a change of government. And those governments that have changed recently should be making pledges first to their own people and then to the rest of the world on the path back to democracy. Democracy is the only route to development. So even we that are in Africa, we are looking very, very closely what is happening. And I come from Nigeria, and what is happening, if you look at the map of Africa, it's all happening just above us on the map. But we have fought very hard for democracy in Nigeria. And I believe that our governments are listening governments. So I would like to hope that we will not see in our own terrain what has happened in other countries. It is time for the intergenerational shift. And it's not about letting the new generation lead. It's about recognizing their readiness for that leadership and hoping that we have all invested in the past to make that leadership a good leadership.
Absolutely, and I love that you talk about an intergenerational shift, because Sierra Leone is surprising the world with the range of young leaders in government. So from your perspective, what are the opportunities and challenges for the continent and for the region?
I think I agree with many things that the Honorable has said. When we think about it, the changes that are happening to our democratic institutions are not and cannot be removed from the global economic challenges that exist and largely driven by outs of African states. The war in Ukraine certainly has had pressures on several economies, and when that then affects prices at home, when that affects the ways in which young people don't have jobs, that leads to unrest. And it's not removed. We can't pretend like, oh, it's just that there's a couple of Africans are agitated now. It's because of the prices that have come from people making bad decisions in other parts of the world. Certainly we take responsibility in our economies as well, but our economies are growing, and we weren't prepared for the COVID shock. We weren't prepared for the Ukraine war. And unfortunately, bad politicians are using that to drive undemocratic processes. We just had a very peaceful election in Sierra Leone, and we are, as you mentioned, starting with a government that has about 10 of its ministers are 40 and under. I'm the chief minister for Sierra Leone, and I'm 36. And you have women. Minister for Innovation is a 32-year-old young lady. And 33% of our ministers are female as well. Same with our in our parliament. These things are, as my president, President Bio, says, it's democratic, because the demography of our country, 70% of our population is youth. So why should we expect that young people should not be leaders? It's not. We're not giving it to them. Young people are leaders. We're not waiting until somebody is 60 before you can come and engage with young people in the streets about what matters to them. So that gives me hope. It gives me hope that there are presidents like President Bio and others who are putting more young people in decision-making positions. We, the young people, including those who are much younger than I am now, have the responsibility to transform our countries, because our children are young. You know, it's not when somebody's is a grandfather, not that it's a bad thing. The ways in which they're making a decision for their grandchildren is different from when they're making a decision for their 6-year-old daughter. I want my 6-year-old daughter and my 3-year-old daughter to live in a society where they can grow to be their full selves. It's not about my grandkids, as great as they can be. It's my child. Yeah. And that's a change. That's what gives me hope. So I think the young people we will learn how to engage with these difficulties. They're real. Prices are high. There's instability. And I don't think that we're suddenly going to go back to the disasters that were in the 90s or 80s. I hope not. I think we'll figure out a way to communicate effectively within state institutions.
And one of the things that Solve does well is bring together young leaders, right? So we're really looking forward to your trajectory, all of you sitting there, and how you will change the world wherever you are. Toyin, I'm going to come back to you. You've actually invested in an entire network of innovators on the continent. And the Solve network, you've been part of it. How has the Solve network kind of helped and enabled that community, and what can we learn from what you've done in our work?
You know, for me, I found the Solve Network incredibly exciting. I want to go back quickly to what you said about young people. You know, all the studies globally now are actually showing that a lot of creativity and innovation is driven by trust. And actually, the two most trusted entities in the world today, in every country, are not governments and not necessarily people because of their age. They are actually corporations, the private sector, innovators, and grandmothers. And you know, it's true. And I'm a very proud grandmother of two. But when I approached Solve, I actually approached Solve, you know, as a judge and looking at all the entries the way a grandmother would. So, you know, I approached them, first of all, from a kindly perspective. So I'm not looking at the entries trying to rip them apart. I'm looking at the entries saying, first of all, where did this innovation come from? Because particularly actually with the African innovators, their innovation came from a point of need. So you would see a lot of innovation around, for instance, water filtration. And then what made me most excited, actually, was the innovations that I saw around mental health. So I approached Solve, you know, because mental health is something that the older generation in Africa does not like to speak about. In fact, in Nigeria, we've only just this year repealed the old, used to be called the Lunacy Act. So it was almost a crime to have feelings. And we repealed that this year. And I had been seeing innovations coming out of Solve, actually not just on mental health around the time of pregnancy, which is actually so normalized for anybody who's had a baby. We all know day 3 we feel quite low. And so a lot of that innovation to me represents areas where the young people, the innovators, have identified that this is an area that needs investment and needs to go to scale. And when you see the same similar innovations coming from different countries, but contextually sound for those countries, it was like a wish list of development. I became so excited. In fact, when we're judging, I even sometimes become quite heated because I would have a reason for really pushing for a certain solution, which to somebody in the north, they might be thinking, well, this is pretty standard because, you know, I can just walk into a hospital and I can just get this. But for me, it was like, oh my God, I need this and I need this scope and I need it to go to scale. So I feel that Solve is so important as an incubation hub. You know, you have to really write a very good proposal to even get through to Solve. The business models are very, very good. And for those of us who are looking for innovation that makes sense to us contextually, but also satisfy our need for globalization. You know, I'm a Nigerian, you can see I'm wearing African clothing, but you know, I'm not having any untidy stitching because I've got global standards. And I make no apology for that, because the one thing that always used to upset me in the development world, and I tell them, you know, what I do and how I've become so successful, for instance, my Mamacare classes in Nigeria, on an average week we see more than 8,000 moms. And yes, it's true, I woke up one day and I employed 45 midwives. And I said, because I feel every mother needs a midwife, and our ratio in Nigeria should be 1 to 40. But it's actually 1 to 20,000. So if I can help and innovate and employ midwives and respect them and show their profession and allow them to go and do what they are trained to do, what they do best, advising mothers throughout pregnancy, not just delivering the baby. And it's so popular, but I probably couldn't do it here. I couldn't just wake up and say, right here, I've got 45 midwives, you know, spread yourselves in the public hospitals. So of course I had to start the hard way, writing for ethical approvals. Please, can I run a program in this hospital? And you would ask why they're not chasing them away. They're not chasing them away because my midwives giving them those free antenatal classes are actually creating demand, and they're helping Nigeria to move to that LMIC declaration of a woman should have 8 antenatal classes during her pregnancy, see her doctors and her midwives 8 times to prevent mortality. So the innovation that Solve brings out, I see apps that make it easier for me to talk to the mothers. I see apps that make it easier for me to get civil registrations done. So all the gaps that occurred in our systems that make them weak, I just come to Solve with, it's like a shopping list. You know, you've gathered the best young innovators in the world who actually approach it in a different way. So I might arrive in New York and I've booked my driver. My kids arrive in New York and they book an Uber and they think I'm crazy. You know, they think, why do you have a driver when you can just book an Uber? And that is the generation of intelligence that needs to grow, not just in Africa, actually, all over the world. So Solve is amazing for that. It's an investor's delight.
That's really wonderful, and I love what you've said about bringing the whole of yourself and the context. So I'm going to end with a question to you, David. So we have the opportunity of, you know, the multicultural kind of experience, the intergenerational knowledge, the linkages that we all have as a community. But what's the one thing we need to pay attention to in terms of scaling up innovations and ensuring partnerships across various sectors of, you know, government, philanthropy, civil society communities? What can you tell us that we can take away with?
I mean, it's a really difficult question because it depends on where you are and whether you're at MIT or Frobe College in Sierra Leone. I must say, Solve as an organization, I think when it was being formed, I was just finishing my PhD at MIT, and I came the year after, I think, here or at some point 5 years ago. And it's just been wonderful seeing how the organization has evolved and continue to bring young startups to the continent, out in the field, to learn. So you do want that link between academia, government, many of them I've spoken to before, academia, government, and private sector. There has to be that drive to bring change. I also think one of the things that can be important for bringing change is we shouldn't equate profit making to greed. And I say this and I mean it. I've seen companies that make 60% profits, 70% profits. Wow. When you try to squeeze the faucet a bit and say, well, you know, you can make 30% profit and 25% profit and you'll still be fine. It's not a loss, right? And they don't seem to understand that having 20% profit is not a loss when they're used to making 60% profit in unhealthy ways. And then it means government has to be able to hold private, greedy people to account and say we need to make sure that there's a lot more equity that's spread. There has to be intention for how we bring opportunities to people and make sure that you can thrive, you can grow, you can employ more people, but it doesn't have to be filthy. For me, I also see innovation becoming very critical. When I joined First Government 5 years ago, I joined as the Chief Innovation Officer. And I remember I spent a lot of time on radio and TV talking about data and technology and innovation. And people always said, you know, we're talking about education and you come and tell us about innovation, you're wasting our time. And a year and a half later, I was made Minister of Education. And it was like, okay, we're going to use technology to ensure that there's progress towards quality education. People said, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. I want to solve my problem in the rural area is how do I get my kids' results in real time? Because now it takes a couple of weeks. It takes $10. I don't like it. It doesn't work. Okay. So with my team, we built this SMS solution where all you needed was your child's admission number. We already have the results digitized, and everybody anywhere can get their child's results by SMS for free automatically. Today it's been used over 10 million times. And so then it's then my responsibility to say to people, well, technology and innovation can make your life better and save you money, and and then now everywhere we go across the country, anybody who has any opportunities to say anything to the president goes, "Oh, thank you for the technology and innovation. It's really good." And that's what we need to do as innovators, is we have to make sure that we don't just talk about technology and innovation, but that we're solving problems that, irrespective of where you are, and I call this radical inclusion. I read a book about it. But irrespective of where you are, the solution must work for you. Yes. And the solution, once you build it to include everybody, the most marginalized, we all are better for it, including the wealthy. Because when we launched the solution, the people who used it the most were in Freetown. And they could have afforded other means, but it's a solution that works for everybody.
And that's the perfect way to end this session. Please clap with your feet and your hands.
Thank you.
Thank you
Radical
so much.
inclusion. I like that. Great Fatima for me. Yes,
And now, please welcome back Hala Hanna, Executive Director of Solve.
An innovative grandma and a young engineer, chief minister. How's that for the future? Thank you so much. You know what? I think it's time that we just meet the 2023 Solver teams. So I'm actually going to encourage everyone to look at the screen, and let's get the location of where we're going next. Some of you may stay here. Some of you may go to the other room. But we are excited to meet the 2023 Solver teams. Let's do it.